Hi, this video is going to be an update where I tell you what I'm going to be bringing out this month of October. I tried to bring out scary stuff during each month of October, but last year I couldn't do that because I was busy with so many things at the same time. The more horror-oriented video that I brought out last year was my review of Cult Divinity Lost. If you haven't seen it, check out my review in the description below. I'm going to put a link to the Cult playlist. And on that note, I'm also going to be bringing out a new Cult Divinity Lost review, very different from the others. I want to keep things as a surprise. And so this month of October I want to catch up, or rather retake what I did a couple of years ago, where I brought out a lot of scary content, things related to folklore and legends and such, and I also gave tips on how you could use those in your role-playing game sessions. I'm going to see if I can make a playlist with those videos, and I'm also going to put the link in the description below so you can check out those past videos. So in this month of October I plan to bring out more things related to scary stuff that you can use in your role-playing games, creepy stuff and such. I also want to make a channel recommendation. The name of the channel is Ghastly Tales, and I'm going to put the link in the description below as well. In that channel they tell scary stories, legends. They are currently visiting haunted locations in Scotland, so that those landscapes and architecture could serve as inspiration for your creepy role-playing games. And I'm also going to make an announcement. About a couple of weeks ago, a friend and a viewer, I wanted to say his name, but some people are really modest about their kindness, so I'm going to refer to him as the Ranger of Shadow Deep. So the Ranger said that he wanted to support the channel and asked if I had a Patreon, but at the moment I do not have a Patreon. I haven't thought too much about it. Maybe in the future, if I manage to put more time into the channel, maybe then I will set up a Patreon, but at the moment I don't have a Patreon. So I told him that if he wanted to support the channel, he could send a gift certificate via DriveThruRPG. So from now on, if someone wants to further support this channel, you could do it by sending a gift certificate via DriveThruRPG. I'm going to put all the information that you need to do that in the description below. What else? Oh, and of course, and I want to start right away with some scary content, and this is going to feature skeletons in role-playing games. Nothing too advanced, just a few basic stuff that I like and dislike about skeletons and how you can use them in your sessions. This is going to be more geared towards game masters on how you can surprise your players, but if you're a player, maybe you can gain some tips on what you can expect from skeletons. Well, let me talk about my experience with skeletons as enemies in role-playing games. Although it's also possible to play as a skeleton player character in some rules. Well, I think it's somewhat... It was destined to be that me being a Mexican, I've always had like familiarity with death. Here in Mexico we have so many things related to death and skeletons and skulls, because of Dia de los Muertos or Day of the Dead. It's in our culture, in our art, and I think there's two sides to this contact with death. There is the positive side where you accept death, you understand it, and therefore you are more equipped to confront it when it actually happens, or let's say to brave it, to challenge it when it is needed, when you need to be brave. But on the negative side, some people worship death and they form cults and criminal organizations. So you have those the light and dark side of death here in Mexico. Kind of like Jedi and Sith. So I always had that contact with skeletons. That is, I saw them pretty much everywhere. You even have sweets, things that you can eat when related to death, like las calaveritas de azúcar, or sugar skulls, or pan de muertos, which is like Bread of the Dead. It's really tasty, very sugary. Well, but besides that, I've always seen skeletons in video games, in board games, role-playing games, of course. So I think it applies to many of you as well. We've all either fought against skeletons in our hobbies, or we've used them as game masters to challenge our players. But there are some things that I don't like about how skeletons are handled in some systems and settings. I talked a bit about this in a past video about a couple of years ago, if I'm not mistaken, but very briefly. And this is that I do not like how skeletons in role-playing games are sometimes handled as automata, just like robots made out of bone, or sort of like bone golems of sorts. That is, the necromancer animates the skeleton, and it feels like he's controlling him like via remote control almost. There is no sense of personality, so to speak, to the skeleton. You don't know what that skeleton was when it was alive, so that feels a bit like a bummer. It takes a bit of the creepiness out of the skeletons, in my opinion. It's much better when the skeleton seems to be animated by powerful necromantics or energies that link the skeleton to either the person that the skeleton was when it was alive, or maybe some sort of extraplanar entity or intelligence is actually taking control of the skeleton and using that skeleton as sort of like a new body. So maybe there is a demon controlling that skeleton, or the spirits of the dead. So that feels a lot more creepy and exciting. Otherwise, you feel like you're fighting like a robot made out of bone. And that's what I really liked of old movies, like for example all of those movies featuring Greek heroes. I think in one of the Sinbad films you also saw that you had these skeleton warriors or fighters causing all sorts of trouble for the main characters, and with each attack, each time that they dodge, they block, they parry, it almost felt like the skeleton had a sort of intelligence or a personality. You can almost imagine the skeleton laughing at the heroes when they missed their attacks against them. So I really like when skeletons, even though they do not talk, they have a sort of charm to them. When they move, they have some like mannerisms, like some quirks to them. There is a war game from Alternative Armies. I'm going to put the link in the description below to the website, that is called Typhon. I haven't played it, but I actually have the game. But I still need to play a session. I still need to paint the miniatures as well. And it's very cool. The first time that I saw it, it's basically based on all of those ancient Greek legends, all of those heroes. And the starter box comes with a few, well, they could belong to different cultures. But you also have skeletons included, and when I first saw them, I thought, oh well, those must be like the grunts of the bad guys. But no, each of one of those skeletons, each skeleton has powers, a sort of leveling up system to them. So it feels really cool. I haven't played it again, but I think that when you start a campaign and you start to level up your skeletons that are referred to as shades in that game, you start to obtain all these different powers and abilities, and you get a better sense of what that skeleton was when it was alive. So I really like those aspects. I made a little list here too, so I don't get lost in what I want to talk about. Let's see. Yes. Usually skeletons are really weak as enemies. You need a large number of skeletons to threaten a party of adventurers. Unless you have a skeleton with some sort of special property like black skeletons, yellow skeletons, red skeletons. There are so many skeletons in role-playing games, and each one has a different power. Type of skeleton is very good at dual wielding. Another skeleton could paralyze you or infect you with some sort of fungi. You have different ways in which the skeletons can also protect themselves. Some of them inflict magical damage. Like the Bane Guard, if I'm not mistaken, in Forgotten Realms, that shoots these like bolts out of its bony hands. But the normal skeleton is usually quite weak. But I really like those role-playing games in which a single skeleton could be a serious threat for the heroes. Usually those games are more on the gritty, realistic, simulationist side of things, like Hackmaster. In Hackmaster, I'm also going to put a link to a video in the description below of a session that I played with my group about 3 or 4 years. I'm not exactly sure when I'm going to put the link. And in that session you can see how a single skeleton was almost caused, well, it was pretty close to cause a total party kill. The fighter had been taking down the gnome titan, and only the cleric stood there with a good chance of inflicting damage to the skeleton. The wizard and the thief were going to be considerably helpless if that cleric went down, because Hackmaster is a very gritty game. Even a character with several levels can be taken down if an enemy gets lucky. You have some really devastating critical hits, and you can also faint or from the shock of the pain. So a single skeleton is quite challenging, and even more so if that skeleton is armed with weapons and some sort of armor or shield. So I really like those skeletons that feel really threatening, even if it's just one skeleton. Let's see, what else? Ah, yes. Going back to what I told you, that I like skeletons with a sort of personality. I really like it when you kind of figure out what that skeleton was when it was alive. Maybe you go to this ancient battlefield and where a lot of soldiers died, and suddenly their skeletons start to rise up because they think they are still fighting, or maybe they died with a lot of rage, a lot of anger, and they cannot pass on or move to another plane of existence until they, I don't know, kill someone or spill some blood. So that feels a lot creepier, more, yes, a bit more ghastly. And I also like it when there is a sort of curse that keeps them going like that. It also makes them a sorts of like tragic figures. So anything that makes your skeletons feel a bit more alive in your games, I think it's a good thing. More alive, even though they are undead. Maybe they animate, but they have this pale yellowish glow in their eye sockets, or maybe they had like 2 red dots that indicates that something is some nefarious thing, some evil intelligence is driving them, it's moving them. Or maybe there is a sort of entity that is actually controlling the skeletons as a sort of suit from another plane, like maybe you have this sort of evil jester looking type of entity from the ethereal or astral plane, and he's moving the skeletons, and the characters do not know why these skeletons are so powerful or that they are very coordinated, and it's only when they take a look into other planes of existence, when they see this horrible nightmarish jester controlling them. That could be a cool way of handling skeletons like that. I also like it when necromancers, when they raise these skeletons, maybe the skeletons are constantly moving at the necromancer with some sort of rage expressed through their glowing eyes. Maybe they don't want to be used as puppets or as minions. That also makes it feel like as if necromancy is really wrong, or that you are risking a lot when you are erasing those skeletons. So that adds a lot more flavor when it comes to the creepiness factor. Let's see. Skeletons, because they are quite hollow, you can put things inside of their skulls or their rib cages, because maybe you want to set some traps, maybe some explosives inside of the skeleton, and maybe each time that the character attacks that skeleton, there is a 20-30% chance that the skeleton will explode, inflicting damage in a, let's say, 10 feet diameter area, and that could make the fighter really nervous, very worried about fighting those skeletons up close. Now the party will have to resort to ranged attacks, and not all of the parties, well, the well-prepared parties do carry slings and sling bullets or stones with them, but many of them prefer crossbows and arrows, and piercing weapons as well as slashing weapons are not so damaging to skeletons. Well, it depends on the system and the game. but usually you want to use crushing weapons or blunt weapons. So those throwing hammers and sling bullets and such are best to be used as skeletons. But maybe the party didn't purchase those weapons when they were back in town, and now they become somewhat worried because you have maybe these 10 skeletons moving against them. That wouldn't be too much of a threat otherwise against a party with several levels of experience, but now they know that if those skeletons get too close they could explode, and they don't want to waste spells. The wizard wants to save his spells for some stronger foes, so putting some explosives or some sort of trap that detonates or triggers due to attacks inside of skeletons could be a really nasty, cruel way of threatening the party. You could go a bit easy on the party. Maybe you can allow a saving throw when the skeleton explodes to see if the fighter takes half damage or no damage at all, but that's an interesting idea on how to handle things. Another thing that I like when using skeletons is that you could put some other thing inside the rib cage of the skeleton, or even the skull. Maybe the skeleton is wearing some sort of tattered robes or decayed armor of sorts, or a cap or a helmet, and the characters do not notice that there is actually something inside the skeleton. Maybe there is this evil impish creature or a small demon that is controlling the skeleton via some sort of mind power, or maybe the skeleton is one of its minions, or they have formed a sort of alliance, and the demon is riding inside of the rib cage, and when the character starts to fight against the skeleton in melee combat, this little being jumps out and tries to strangle the character, or maybe just jumps out and starts to move around to get that flanking bonus against the fighter or the cleric or whoever is fighting against the skeleton. Maybe you want to hide a sort of snake enemy or insect enemy inside of the skull of this skeleton. Maybe the skull is already quite hollow and the eye sockets have fallen inside. There are two holes, and there is a smaller enemy hiding within. Maybe the enemy is poisonous. Like I said, maybe some sort of fiendish extraplanar snake, or some sort of spider from the negative plane of existence, something like that. And when the character least expects it, that small enemy, jumps from out of the sockets of the skeleton and attacks the character's face. That could be an interesting way to surprise the player characters. Let's see. I also think that skeletons are really fun. Moving away a bit from the creepy side of them, if you use them to, let's say, to transport a treasure within a dungeon. Maybe the skeleton is dressed in magical armor or holding a very powerful weapon, and this means that the player characters will have to face off against the skeleton that is wielding those magical items or artifacts or weapons or whatever it is equipped with. But you could have the skeleton running around the dungeon. Maybe you can make a random table. You make some rolls to see where the skeleton is headed to. Maybe he's taking the west corridor, or maybe he's heading towards the charnel room, or to the underground treasure vault. So now the characters, the party knows that they have heard this rumor that there is this skeleton that is wielding the mace of King who knows the second, or the armor of the paladin of who knows what. And now they are interested in getting their hands on that weapon, but they have to chase the skeleton throughout the entire, let's say, catacombs or underground necropolis. And you could feel that underground complex with deadlier undead such as wights and wraiths and morgs or whatever, depends on the game. So it's going to be like a sort of scavenger hunt, not too much, but it's going to feel like you're chasing these valuable treasures, and you still have to fight that skeleton once you get to it. I will also recommend that you make that skeleton a bit more powerful, of course, give him more hit points, better attack bonuses. You can also handle skeletons as if they're some sort of special ingredient for a ritual or to create an artifact or item. Maybe you need the 3 skulls of the 7 warriors that died inside the cave of infernal who knows what, and now you have to enter that area and you're looking for these 3 skeletons that are constantly moving about. Sometimes they move into areas that have enemies that are too powerful for the player characters, and so in some areas maybe they don't, it's not worth it to go into those areas. Maybe there is a Dracolich, very powerful Dracolich, or a vampire, and the characters actually have to camp out sometimes or wait for the skeleton to move to another area where they can actually enter. Maybe that area is empty, or maybe there are some other enemies and they have to fight them as well as the skeleton, but they need those bones from those legendary warriors to create this artifact, this item, or for this ritual. Maybe it's a ritual to summon those warriors into existence on the side of the player characters or something like that. So there are many ways in which you can use skeletons. So, well, these are just some ways in which I like to use them. Maybe you have already used them in such ways, or maybe you have some more original ways in which you can employ skeletons in your games. If you have any suggestions on how to use skeletons in role-playing games to enhance their creepiness, or to make them more fun, like I said, putting explosives within them, or magical traps, or whatever you like, or those enemies, please write your tips and advice or experiences in the comments below. Well, that's it for now. I'm going to be bringing out more creepy, moody, Halloweeny type of stuff for this month of October. I have planned some things, but if you have some suggestions or comments on some videos that I could make related to creepy stuff, maybe something related to folklore or to a particular enemy from a role-playing game system or anything, please write down your thoughts in the comment section below. Well, thanks for watching this video, this update. If you have other comments or questions, please let me know. And again, if you wish to further support the channel, please check out the information in the description below to see how you can send a gift certificate. Once again, thank you for watching, and see you later.